guys, going to talk about ATHE. This was one that just worked right away, so video won't be too long. Obviously, strong market, big moves. Doesn't mean every pre-market runner is going to run, 300%, then 500%, then 1,000%. I'm still looking for weakness on the book, but I do want Bookmap confirmation if I'm going to be shorting, 5 minutes after some parabolic move, right? So here's my trade. I'll show you why I shorted here. I had an 840 average. I took some off on the first kind of 20% pullback just because the market's so strong. I just, and this trade is so early in the move. In strong markets, a lot of times there's multiple moves. There's 2, 3, 4, 5 moves, and I never know how the book's going to flip. I never know which bids are going to hold. So I just covered some bids that were below 7. And that was a quarter partial, and I was already up 20%. I was like, all right, well, that just gives me a decent buffer, and if the trade works the rest of the way, and then we'll see that it worked perfectly. Had a lot of nice ask on the book map that were holding up here, and I actually covered everything in the pre-market because I thought maybe there'd be some type of market open move. I was actually very bullish both SSNT and ATHE at market open just because we've seen these big down only dumps get attacked through the empty space. So I was like, well, let me see what market open looks like. And I actually thought market open, I actually long this, not as big as my short, but I long this. I'll show you the bids. There's a lot of bids and very little ask. And I long this in the 440s, low 440s. The problem is it did a big push. I was actually up about 20% instantly. But I thought there'd be a bigger push up to 5.5 and 6 and that type of thing. And then they pulled it back. They stacked a lot of ask. And I just got out for, a very small win. It was pretty much nothing. So this just remained heavy the rest of the day. And then I missed the VWAP 4.75 clear out before the support crack. So we'll go over that. Go over the book. So we'll look at the book on the, So I see the big parabolic move. We'll go to the chart too. I see the big parabolic move, and you see that the book is really thin up here. That's why you're getting this like 6.1s to 9.6s down to 7.2s. Back up to 9.31. It's like doing all these crazy moves. There's no halt bands in the pre-market, so it's just there's just so many there's so many possibilities of what can happen, right? You'll see why I shorted this. I actually shorted the red candle. You'll see why. You'll see that there's a lot more book map confirmation and a lot tighter risk, right? It's just I'm waiting for something that's just easier to read, because when something's doing this, like here's the high day squeeze, and here's the the 9.3 move, like you'll see here that like between 8 and 9, there's just nothing on the book. So this thing could just teleport $1. And if you're chasing, the bottom of this move, you're just getting ripped 10% in what's honestly probably 3-4 seconds. And I really want to see it slow down a bit. I want to see where the asks are actually getting stacked. So it starts to consolidate, which is great. Like it's much easier to read this consolidation and see where the bidders are and ask are than trying to predict this crazy stuff, right? So I see the 9 guys hold here, and then I see more guys stack lower in 8.7s. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I'm always reading the bid support, and I'm noticing that in the beginning, there's kind of like, say like right here, there's like bid, ask. So it's kind of like, it's not immediately clear what's going to happen, right? I just don't quite know how to read this yet. But then what I see here is I see the bids start to get pulled. So now there's only this one guy down at 7.5s down here. And I'm always paying attention, like, all right, there's an ask at like 8.7s, right? Like, what does the buying look like? These green bubbles, what does the buying look like into the 8.7s? And is any of this ask getting actually taken out? And of course, I got 9 above that, so I got kind of 2 layers up here. And I'm starting to see kind of bids that were holding it before start to get taken out. And I'm like, I see it test 8.7s here, see it tested here, and then after I saw this tested here, I'm like, all right, let me just throw up some shares in this consolidation, and I'm like, well, there's when there's only one bidder at a key level, I could see below that there's no bids between 7.5 and 6.6. So if this cracks to 7.5, which is, there's not a lot of bids at 7.5, if that gets taken out, then it's going to go to 7.6, right? I don't mind if there's one bidder, right? If you go over my VVOS, MINM, Nexi pre-market videos, you'll see that there were layers of bidders, right? You really don't want to see layers and layers and layers. Like one kind of big guy at just one level, in this case it's a $half level, is fine. Especially at $half, whole dollar, you'll see offers kind of no matter what on the book, but it's when you start getting stacks and stacks and stacks, where it's like 7.5s. Say if this was like, we have this $8 guy, but like 7.5s and 7.7s and then 8. If I saw like 3, 4 layers of bids, then you're playing the is all 4 layers of these bids going to get broken game, and that game's not a fun game to play. But I did like how every time I was reading the tape, it was pushing into these offers up here. And it was right around here that I started shorting, right? When I saw this bid pull and I saw this like the third, fourth test of this ask level, not getting in through, and I just got in here, and it's one of those, so it's like, all right, like I have the 8.7 ask and the 9 ask to kind of risk, because, there's not really a whole lot above that. I don't want to put at high day because, there's the book's kind of empty to the upside. This market's really hot. You kind of have to pick decent layers of ass that you can risk into so you don't get squeezed. And here's the bids I started initially covering into. Like, you see these bids hold down here. I already saw these bidders down here. And again, you see this, like, every time you get a big crack like this is 20% move in about a minute, is going to create a lot of empty space. And that empty space doesn't mean high day squeeze is coming, but in this type of market, I want to cover into these bids because I know the rotation is possible, right? But, okay, it works both ways. Now you get starting to stack layers. You've seen these layers of bids, layers of bids, layers of bids, pushes through the empty space, but I'm already short, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep my short. You don't want to flip. Like, every time, I trade a stock, I have to pick a bias. If my bias is short bias on this push up here, I want to hold that bias even if the book is disagreeing with it, right? At this current moment, right? Because you never know what's going to happen after the push. You never know if, like, are more bids going to come up here and push it? Is it just going to stall and go down? You don't know. So, like, it's best to just pick a bias, pick a risk that makes sense, and play the chart, right? And if your bias was wrong, then you just take the loss, right? Just otherwise you're going to be questioning every single move, every single bid, on the Bookmap, and every single ask, and it, like, after you're in a trade and a trade's working, it's best to just simplify it, man. Just when I'm short bias and I see a big pullback and I see the empty space, I know it's very easy for them to move it through the empty space. But what's the most important thing are the asks, right? I see an 850 guy here, and you never know what new asks are going to show up. So in this case, we get a push, and then a new guy shows up at 8.3s. Like, cool, I like new ass showing up. There's 8.5s. Okay, so I got multiple layers. And really, what I'm just paying attention to, and I know there's going to be a few guys at 9 that kind of disappeared, but I was going to worry about that, later after it started pushing. But ultimately, above 9 was really empty. So I was really paying attention to these guys and then the 9 guy. And at this point, it kind of becomes unclear what's going to happen because you do see bids following this up, but you see ask following it down, right? And I'm like, well, I'm just going to, make it real simple. Until it breaks this 8.5 guy, I'm not going to worry too much about the play. I like that new ask are kind of following this down like this. That's always a good thing. And after I see again the 7.5 guy, I see a lot of empty space below that guy. So if the sellers went out on the ask, I know that there's going to be a lot of weakness. We come back down. Again, every time there's a dump, there's always empty space. Unless you see new ask following it down, doesn't mean it's bullish. But you can't freak out on these little pushes, right? Because, like, what ultimately matters is these guys, the ask. What happens at the ask? That's what matters. So if you're short and the trade is working, and you get a big crack, and you're like, man, it's going great, and then you see a 10-15% rotation. You're like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Really, I just pay attention to these guys. In this case, this was a nice little long trap. You could see the bids getting pulled. The classic long trap is you get initiation with bids getting pulled and no further buying, right? And especially if there's ask, there's like 3-4 layers of ask up here. Um, and that's what ultimately leads to the pull. And I actually started covering into these bidders down here. And then the market opened long, very simple. We get a little bit of weakness, empty book all the way up to the fives, and I see bid, bid, follow-up bid, and when I saw this follow-up bid, this is where I went long, proceeded to sell none of it, and then it pulled back, and this is ask, 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 ask. I see the ask starting to follow this down. I see the buying and the volume start to decrease. It was at what do you call it, on the push. This was 700,000 shares. So I'm like, yeah, man, the volume's picking up. It's going to go to the moon. And then it came back down and started trading, sub 200K with ask, ask, ask. And I'm like, oh, I don't think it's going to work. And then I really just got out for, I don't know, a couple percent win or something like that. It wasn't a big deal. But yeah, this was nice. Last thing I'll talk about is classic backside structure. This is a single order, by the way. So this actually didn't reach this level. But we got higher low, higher low, higher low, higher. So they build higher lows, hour and a half. This painted 7.5, painted lower high, which is also where VWAP is. Do a nice clear out. We could go to the book map really fast. Go to the book on the clear out. You'll see what's the most important thing when stocks make aggressive moves like this. Are the bids following? So there's a big bidder at 415, 420. That's why the higher lows are there, is because there's bidders. Bid, 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 bid. That's why it's holding. So just because there's bids at the bottom, what really matters is, okay, when they're doing this backside move, right, and especially in a strong market, you don't know if this is going to go to $5 or $6 or $10. You don't know, but you can get some idea of what's going to happen based on how many bids. Here's a little bid down here, but on the actual little retail backside, clear out move, no bids. They put up a little one down here. It pushes again, and there's just nothing on the book here. There's nothing on the book, and look how many layers of ass. Like, a lot of times you'll see this. You'll see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of ass, and it just like it'll eat through. I don't know. You might eat through none of them. One might eat 2 of them, 4 of them, 6 of them. You never know. Maybe it goes straight up. Maybe new bids show up. Maybe it breaks 5, and then a 30,000 share bid shows up at 5 and keeps pushing it. You never know. There's a million things that could happen. But one thing that does happen is you see a lot of backside ass getting filled like this, right? And then eventually the buying stalls, doesn't even hit this 20K guy at 5, and then they pull it. And then we go back to the chart, and we see here that it holds the higher lows for another 20 minutes and then cracks. So higher lows, backside clear out, back to the higher lows, crack. Like, it's a classic backside move. And a lot of times these moves happen, like these types of backside clear outs it's usually at least an hour later, ideally for something this painted. Sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 hours later. Sometimes, I've seen 4-hour backside, lower, higher low paint jobs, right? That higher low for 4 hours straight, do a backside move just like this, and then it fades 30% in 10 minutes, right? So just to let you know, kind of set your expectations for how long it takes for some of these moves to happen and why they happen. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know how this video is 14 minutes long. I thought it was going to be like 5 minutes, but that's this trade. Sadly, I didn't get the read on this. And I just missed, I missed this move. But I caught the big one in the pre-market. So, anyways, ATHE. That's a good one. Information about my Discord down below. See you guys.